What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe.
All right, so Saints and Raiders played yesterday, and, you looked at this, and, well, to be quite frank, it was a battle of NFL bottom feeders this year. The Saints came into the game 5-10. The Raiders came into the game just 3-12. Game obviously in New Orleans, and it is a game that everyone thought, hey, if the Saints are going to win one the rest of this season, the Raiders game is going to be it, because you got a Bucs team coming up that are playing as good as anybody in the NFL. You have the Raiders coming in. They've went from Gardner Minshew to Aiden O'Connell to Desmond Ridder, now back to Aiden O'Connell, and really outside of Brock Bowers, they haven't had a ton of weapons to work with all season. Well, your final score yesterday, the Las Vegas Raiders 25, the New Orleans Saints 10, which first off, the Raiders have now won back-to-back games. They really don't want that number one overall pick. The Giants apparently don't either. We'll get into that a little bit later on, but it's a game that you really thought the Saints had a shot at getting. But what ultimately happened? Well, it's the same problems that have haunted this team all year long came back to bite you in this game. You couldn't stop the run. And when I mean you couldn't stop the run, I mean Amir Abdullah, the Raiders running back, he played in his 141st NFL game yesterday, had never had a 100-yard game. Well, he had never played the Saints defense because he finally got to the century mark for the first time in his NFL career. To show you again how bad that run defense was, the Raiders had not had a 100-yard rusher all season. Again, thanks to the Saints, they accomplished that feat as well. It really wasn't Brock Bowers. I mean, Brock had a solid game because he's too good of an athlete to completely shut down. He had 7 for 77 yards. Like, you did about as good as you could on Brock Bowers. You just couldn't stop the run. To show you just how bad it was, the Raiders ran for 156 yards. The Saints ran for 81. And the Saints are the ones that got out to the early lead. You saw the trick play. It was the pitch to Kendre, the pass back to Spencer Rattler. He throws it all the way down the field to Foster Moreau, which, if there's a bright spot in this game, it probably is Foster Moreau. He had a heck of a game. He's had a few of those here down the stretch. But you were also horrendous on third down defense. Now, you look at it and you can say, okay, well, the Raiders were 10 of 18 on third down, a little over 50%. They're one of the worst teams in the league coming into this game on third down efficiency. And it was 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12s, and you could not get off the field. On the flip side of things, the Saints 1 for 10 on third down conversions. So you couldn't run the ball. You couldn't stop the run. You were awful on third down, and you could not convert on third down. That is a recipe for disaster. And when you watch the game, you could just feel it. There was no juice in this team. I mentioned they got out to the 7-0 lead, but what ultimately happened, the Raiders go in a little bit of a run. They make it 13-7. I know that if you were sitting at home like me, you saw 13-7 and you said, well, that's the ball game. The Saints have no shot at coming back in this game. And that's ultimately what happened. Now, the Saints left a lot out there. They had some drop passes. They had a lot of penalties. But blocking remains a huge issue for you. Spencer Rattler was under duress all day long, and we'll get to him in just a second. And it wasn't just your pass blocking. You couldn't run block. You couldn't pass block. And this is against a Raiders defense that, is kind of middle of the road. They're kind of a pedestrian defense, and you looked completely lost. Now, sure, you had Oli Udoh in there for Lucas Patrick, but does Lucas Patrick, of all people, make a huge difference in this game? I don't think he does. Then we get to the drop passes. Spencer Rattler honestly played about as well as he could have under these circumstances. Even when he did get out of the pocket, even when he escaped pressure, you got to do a better job of catching the ball. Now, you have no names out there receiver. Me and Musso were basically the fourth receivers for this team. No Chris Olave, no Rashid Shaheed. We know all that. Cedric Wilson's been a huge disappointment this year. You don't have anybody to throw the ball to. And that's why I think Spencer Rattler was probably as good as he could have been under these circumstances. I looked at his stats in the first half, and I was a little bit blown away. He went 10 of 12 for 146 yards, a touchdown, no turnovers. Now, that last pass of the first half was an intentional throwaway. He was rolling out, trying to find something, threw it out of the back of the end zone to give Groupie a chance to come in there and kick the field goal. to make it 13-10 at halftime, which he ultimately did. So you have one incompletion, one throwaway, you're 10 of 12 for 146 yards and a touchdown, and it's a 3-point game at halftime. And you're thinking, okay, you started out hot with 7-0, getting the long touchdown on one of your earlier drives. The Raiders, they knock out 13 points in a row, but you come right back, you cut into that deficit before halftime, and you're at home, you have the home crowd behind you. It was a complete 180 in the second half. Rattler really struggled, but again, the Raiders defense stiffened up, right? They got after him a lot more in that second half. The Raiders sacked Spencer Rattler 4 times in that game. You sacked Aiden O'Connell 1 time in that game. You made Aiden O'Connell look like a competent NFL starting quarterback, which he most certainly is not. Aiden O'Connell in this game, 20 of 35, 242 yards and 2 touchdowns. And even when you got pressure on him, he was able to escape it. You didn't tackle well. I mean, there's not a whole lot of positives to come out of this game. If you do have some positives, here they are. Again, I thought Spencer Rattler did about as good as he could under these particular circumstances because he was under duress all game. His receivers did not bail him out. And, there's been a lot of discussion on Spencer Rattler. Can he be the quarterback of the future? Can he not be? At times we've seen him make great plays. At times we've seen some stinkers. But just think about what he has to work with. Right now, your starting running back, even though I question whether he should be, is Kendre Miller. You spent a 3rd-round draft pick on Kendre Miller. He is the highest draft pick of any of your skill positions in terms of players you drafted. You didn't draft Morrow. Tipton wasn't drafted. Cedric Wilson, you didn't draft. Spencer Rattler himself was lower than a 3rd-round pick. Your best skill position guy in terms of draft capital you invested in is Kendre Miller as a 3rd-round pick. What rookie quarterback is going to thrive under that system when there's absolutely no weapons to throw to? You got your 3rd-string running back in there, and you have a makeshift offensive line in front of you that's frankly not that good even when they're fully healthy. I don't put a lot of the blame on Spencer Rattler. Did he make some boneheaded throws? Sure, he did. He's a rookie that was drafted late in the draft that has had to play a lot more than you thought he would with no weapons around him. Did he make some nice throws? He did. He made some flash plays where you're like, okay, maybe there's a little something here. I'll go back to the Foster Morrow touchdown. If you watch that, they pitch it to Kendre Miller to the right. Miller tosses it back left to Spencer Rattler. He's got Jawan Johnson on a crossing route right there for about a 20-yard gain. But Rattler wants to go for the jugular. He wants to take that long pass. Not many guys out there can make that throw across the field into the corner of the end zone. He dropped it into the bucket to Foster Morrow. It was an excellent throw. It's probably the best throw I've seen him make since he was a rookie. So you have that going for you. He had the late interception in that game, but he was just trying to make a play, and at that point, it didn't really matter because you're down by 14 with just under 3 minutes to go, and your defense can't stop him anyways. At that point, that didn't matter. Another positive that I want to point out, and if you look at the stat sheet, he didn't light up the stat sheet or anything like that, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire got into the game. He had 3 carries in this game he had 5 carries for 20 yards. So he averaged 4 yards per carry. And this is a guy that has been with your organization for less than 2 weeks now. And it's awful to say 5 carries for 20 yards is by far the best of any of your running backs. He had 5 for 12. Jamal Williams he had 5 for 20. Jamal Williams 2 for 12. Kendre Miller just 3 carries for 3 yards, which he was supposed to take advantage of this opportunity, right? Alvin Kamara's been down for 2 weeks. All you heard Kendre Miller say was, well, I wasn't really hurt. It was Dennis Allen keeping me out. Okay, here's your shot. Go take advantage of it. Go grab this job. He has not done that. He's looked really bad in 2 games as that bell cow running back. He was ultimately replaced late in the game where they were just rolling with Jamal Williams because Clyde probably doesn't fully know the playbook yet. Jamal Williams, your most trusted back right now because Kendre Miller's just not making it happen for you. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire got out there, 5 carries, 20 yards. He had a 9-yard run in the first quarter where he looked really strong. Because this is a guy, like a first-round pick. He's had 1,000 yards rushing in this league. But what happened? Injuries piled up. Then a guy by the name of Isaiah Pacheco gets drafted by the Chiefs, really takes over that job from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then Helaire had been out all this year. He had dealt with PTSD because of the issue that happened here in Baton Rouge back in 2019, right before the 2019 season occurred. Clyde's been through it as far as injuries, as far as mental health, as far as losing his starting job. He's back here in Louisiana, in New Orleans. And maybe That's kind of the one thing I want to watch going forward in this last game with the Bucs. I don't think you have a shot at beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are playing a lot better than they were when you first met, and you were playing a lot worse than when you guys first met. Get Clyde Edwards-Helaire involved a little bit. Can you bring him back? Again, I get it. You gave Alvin Kamara his money. He's been excellent. He's getting a little older. Kendre Miller certainly doesn't look like the answer. Clyde Edwards-Helaire can be a cheap option for this team moving forward. Give him a one-year deal next year. See what happens. Give him a prove-it deal. If nothing else, he could be a solid back to spell Alvin Kamara, who has a lot of wear and tear on that body right now. Also, the free publicity that LSU got in this game. Me and Musso were talking about it before we came on air. Foster Moreau had a really good game. 3 for 47 and that 30-yard touchdown catch, obviously. Clyde Edwards-Helaire got in there. Caleb Von Chason had a sack. Terrace Marshall had a big catch. It was a 28-yarder down the sidelines. He high-pointed the football. He did a really nice job on that catch. I would have liked to have seen them target him a little bit more. So LSU got a lot of free publicity. Spencer Rattler, he wasn't terrible. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire got in there. There might be something there for the future. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot you could take away from this game. I think that you always talk about the interim bump, right? And you saw it for the first 3 weeks. Darren Rizzi came in. He started winning some games. Everybody said, oh, well, it's already better than Dennis Allen. The interim bump is gone. This team has regressed now the past 2 or 3 weeks. That spark you had from Darren Rizzi is gone. I don't see how he is retained this offseason. I didn't think so after the loss to the Packers, the 34-0 blowout on Monday Night Football. Then you lose to a Raiders team at home who you really should have beaten. I mean, that was the one win you had left on your season. I mean, in my opinion, they don't have a shot against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're probably going to finish the season 5-12. I don't see how Darren Rizzi gets the full-time job, but that's just a few positives in a season filled with a lot of negatives for the New Orleans Saints.
Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the two guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.